There were dramatic events in round 9 of the FIDE Grand Prix tournament in Baku. I'm going to show you a couple of snippets from the games there. First of all, the game between Fabiano Caruana and Alexander Grischuk. We joined the game after 23 moves. You can see that Caruana's king is in the middle of the board, but he is a pawn up. If white reached an endgame, then those pawns on the queen side could certainly prove to be very useful. So, for example, if Grischuk were to exchange pawns in the middle, then of course Caruana would grab the endgame, and although black wins a pawn back, you can see that his pawns in the middle aren't particularly useful, and well, in this kind of situation white would have very good winning chances. But because of white's king in the middle, black has reasonable compensation here because he has a majority of pawns in the centre. Actually, the position reminds me somewhat of a Sicilian defence, although it came from a very different opening. Because in the Sicilian, black often has this majority of pawns in the centre of the board, which can give him very good play on the king side. So what Grischuk did was to check the king, so that steps out of the pin, but Caruana is still very keen to get a trade of queens and blocks with his own queen. So Grischuk came back. So now he's stepped out of the pin and, well, for example, threatens to exchange here and give a check on g4. So Caruana came back again. So they've repeated the position, and they did this once more. So if Caruana wants, he can repeat the position and make a draw with queen b3. Now, they often say that in chess, overconfidence is probably better than too little confidence. And Caruana was brave. He declined to go for the draw and instead exchanged pawns in the middle. But this does bring black's knight to a good post in the middle of the board. And white's king is still wandering, so Caruana just nudged to the side. And now you can see that black has play through the middle of the board. So already a threat here, a discovered attack threatened. So the queen came to the side, queen c4. But black has good compensation here. So the queen on a nice diagonal, so making room for the knight to move. So now there's kind of a threat to take here to bring the king into the middle of the board. Rook came to the middle, just so that white can recapture there. And you can see that black's pieces are looking very active. It's a nice initiative that black has. So, well, Caruana had clearly intended this to block out one of the rooks, so brings the bishop to a more secure square, but that does allow the knight into this wonderful square, and you can see that queen, rook and knight all looking at d3, and this is not easy for white at all. Here Caruana played king g1. He was, I think, short of time, and this was a mistake. He should have played king f1. Certainly he needed to move his king. There was a threat to play knight d3 check. But king f1 would have been the move, and the point is that after rook d2, well, this looks very dangerous, but white can defend with rook a2. And this doesn't work. We'll see what happens in the game. But this doesn't work in this case, because after rook takes, knight takes rook, the king can take the knight and white is a piece up. Now after king f1, black would still have fantastic compensation. There are many ways to do this. I mean, maybe g4 is possible. You could still move the rook in, and after this move just come back again. That's possible. We might even get a draw by repetition if the queen goes back to c4, but certainly, you know, when white's rooks are split like this, they can't actually defend very well. So black has very good compensation. Let's see what happened in the game. King g1 looks best to keep the king out of trouble, But in this case, rook d2 is actually a winning move. Obviously, there's the threat to take here. So Caruana played rook a2, and he must have simply overlooked that knight g2 is very strong, because in this case, after rook takes, knight takes, and you saw in the other variation the king could take the knight, but obviously not here. And the problem is that another pawn drops, so now black is actually a pawn up. But the most important thing here is not really the extra pawn, it's the fact that white's king has no pawn cover, and black has this fantastically solid position on the king side. You know, black can't be disturbed here, and really all Grischuk needs to do is hold his position together, and he's going to be able to attack white's king, and that's what happened. So Grischuk just crept forward, so threat to take here, and now the rook moved in, so suddenly the rook is threatening to come down. A check from white's queen, that's blocked very easily. A threat to the e-pawn, but that's also blocked easily. You can see how solid black's position is. White can't disrupt black in any way here. Okay, Caruana pushes on. It's a forlorn hope. And knight e1. I mean, there are many ways for black to win this, but this is pretty simple. So knight e1 makes room for the queen to come in on these squares. Threatens the queen. So really this has to be taken. And now this is a winning move, threatening queen and threatening the pawn here. So Caruana gave up his queen, and well, basically it was all over. After this, you know, the pawns just rolled forward, and well, it was a very easy win for Grischuk. So Caruana loses his second game of the tournament. And that meant, well, there were lots of decisive games in this round. Let me just show you one more game very, very quickly. Just the end of the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Rustam Kazimdzhanov. Now, it was a Berlin defence. They've reached an endgame. Well, you can see that Nakamura has a very nice rook here. So looking at this slightly weak pawn on b6. White is definitely better here. I think if black played perfectly, he should be able to equalise. But it's not simple. Black is definitely under pressure. Best move here is probably to do something like bishop e6. Or let's say f6 to give the king some room, take away a square. But, you know, white is comfortable here. You know, there are many ways to improve white's position. I would like to play f3 and perhaps bring the king out to e3. You never know, this knight may be able to spin round to c3. But with white controlling the one open file in the position, white certainly has the better chances. But as I said, black ought to be able to hold that. But it's not so simple. But Kazimdzhanov cracked. He played rook takes pawn, and this was a terrible mistake. Rook d8 came, threatening the bishop. The bishop moved. Now, if the bishop comes in straight away, then black can defend against the pin with the rook e8. But Kazimdzhanov must have overlooked this simple move, rook e1, after which he just resigned. Black must exchange. And now there's simply no defence to bishop d6, picking up the knight. So that wins a piece and the game. So after rook e1, Kazimdzhanov was forced to resign. So, well, that means that in the tournament there are now 6 players sharing the lead on 5 out of 9. Caruana, Nakamura, Karyakin, Gelfand, Radyabov and Svidler. I should say that Gelfand was outplayed by Mamedyarov. So 6 players in the lead with 2 rounds to go. It's going to be an exciting finish.